Hello everyone, I'm Forrest McCreelova and this is Speedplay Cossacks number 4. We left off having lost a significant portion of our territory. We went bankrupt, so we can't really expect to use our armies in any real manner for the next 10 years. So ultimately, as long as we're able to maintain something resembling the peace, while admittedly we can't actually be at peace since we are nomadic, and that would lead to a whole slew of negative repercussions. So long as we're relatively at peace and don't lose too much additional territory, we should be able to bounce back. Now, the war we're in currently is not going ideally, and we are forced to raise autonomy across our provinces. We are at -3 stability, so we are going to have to just dig our way out of this. Hopefully, if we're lucky, the enemies that we are actually fighting right now, admittedly they did just stack wipe us, hopefully they won't actually take anything from us. We do go ahead and build an army so we can unsiege that one Korean province we have left. Luckily, at this point, the only thing that we have to worry about is our vassals, who are already disloyal, kind of just getting beat up in this war. And really, that's kind of helpful in its own way. We do manage to take our province back, which is great. We don't have to worry about losing it. And we'll just sort of let our vassals deal with the enemy armies for now. Worst case, it weakens them, and they're disloyal, so I'm actually completely fine with them getting weakened. It really does help us in a kind of backwards and more or less non-ideal way. We get a call to arms, which, quite frankly, we're going to go ahead and decline. We can't really fight the Orate Horde right now, or probably not for a decent amount of time at any rate. With that all taken care of, we had to raise autonomy again. Ideally, so long as we don't have to fight any revolts, we should be in the clear. We can fight Yurin. Ideally, we'll do that a little bit later once we actually have our morale and we're no longer basically bankrupt. We do switch our native policy so that we'll be able to go ahead and actually colonize relatively successfully. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that while we're bankrupt. Ming declares war, bringing Korea alongside, and really we're just going to go ahead and give them their lands, and that was in the reverse. Korea declares war, bringing Ming. We go ahead and just give them those two provinces, as I can only imagine their war goals would get worse, not better, once they saw the state of our military. So we're definitely in a period of out-and-out decline. As long as we're able to wheel around and bring it back, though, we should be at least decently alright. You'll notice we are at risk of a disaster occurring. Hopefully we'll be able to prevent that before it actually breaks out. We are forced to make peace, giving up one of these territories. We are now at war with Yurin. We have ended our bankruptcy area, or bankruptcy period, and we're able to start just moving into the enemy. Hopefully, we'll be able to defeat them in battle, and if so, we'll be able to just re-annex Yurin, bringing them back into the fold. It will cost us no admin power, as, quite frankly, we already still have cores on all of this land. We're just taking back things we've already had. We are moving forward. It looks like a battle is going to occur. Unfortunately, they just wiped that small army, which is just completely unfortunate. We are going to have to go back and re-siege our capital. Now, Yurin's forces are coming after us, and I was wrong. We just now got out of our period of bankruptcy. They had declared the war, which is why we were at war early. Sorry for the slight misunderstanding. We go ahead and see that we would actually be able to annex them entirely in this war. We did get our capital back, so we're able to start moving forward, and we'll just go ahead and attack their capital, essentially forcing them to come deal with us. And luckily, our vassal is no longer disloyal, and they sent forces over to help us, which is great news. We do manage to go ahead and get our sieging force back to the rest of our army, and we're just going to avoid their main army with this small stack, and just try to siege their occasional forces. They have to go all the way around while we can use the fort, which is pretty nice. We do go ahead and just jostle our estates a little bit. It doesn't really solve anything at the moment. Ultimately, though, we aren't in a terrible position. We do go ahead and cross over. Unfortunately, we were attacking, but we did win, so it's not like it matters very much. And ultimately, just like this, we're able to get at least some portion of our power back into our own hands. It is fantastic news. We are no longer just in a period of out-and-out decline. We did cede a lot of land to the Orate, as you'll notice. They are now bordering us again. That war lasted all of a few seconds, as I just immediately folded and gave them everything. Admittedly, that isn't perhaps a great long-term solution, but at that point it was all we could really hope for. Now, unfortunately, we are going to have to accept the demands of those rebels, as they just had an army we can't really beat. For the next few years, we're really going to just have to be picking choices that result in the least rebellion, really. And we do get a pretender rebel. Depending on how good they compare to our current leader, we may just allow them to do their thing. We are colonizing now for the first time, more or less successfully, in a way that we'll be able to just hold on to. We were unfortunately forced to take a couple loans in that Yurin War, which may put us back on that terrible cycle of just doom and gloom. Ultimately, if we're able to just bounce back, it would be great. We are once again back at -3 stability, however, which is rather unfortunate to say the least. And we are just attempting to handle everything. Admittedly, a bunch of negative events. Our tribes just rose up. Unfortunately, they killed the pretender who we were kind of hoping would be able to take control. Now, I'm not exactly sure how we'll handle that. We do just give in to the tribes, as there's no way our army would be able to actually defeat that. And we are running a pretty consistent deficit. We could get that back under control by canceling our colony. However, it's already around halfway there. And at this point, I'm legitimately considering that it may be in our best interest to just sort of flee from this area. The fact that Korea and Ming are actively expanding into us, or at least Korea with the help of Ming, and that Orate is more or less being belligerent right now, we may have to give up the goal of actually really succeeding here. Now, that isn't to say we would give up on the campaign. There is always hope, and we're not quite done yet. We do have to deal with that rebellion. We do go ahead and just release them as a vassal, because we couldn't defeat that army. That does weaken us a bit, however, now we do have a vassal who is not yet disloyal, so we may be able to use them in order to achieve, hopefully, something less negative in the future. We are unfortunately at a point where we're just accepting the demands of people pretty much every time it comes up, or using our military power to suppress them when at all possible. And at this point, it's about time we start exploring with our navy. We could, in the worst case scenario, try to expand into Siberia in order to just sort of escape the issues going on. I do have Random New World on, and I didn't quite look at it, so it's possible that we could go into the Random New World and become a colonial sort of empire. We do go ahead and just make peace with Korea again, giving them their demands, as them and their Ming armies are too much for us to handle. So at this point, what I think is the proper course of action is that we're going to attack into Siberia and just do what I had previously mentioned. We will go into the Siberian region, take all of those lands, spend time securing them. That area should be safe from Korea and China and the Orate, and really just the constant series of disasters which are occurring on our mainland. Unfortunately, they stack wiped our army, which was in no way ideal. We must have just fallen behind on military tech, as there's really no reason we should have lost that horrendously. Now, they are still coming for us, so we do have to deal with this at some point, and they went to an island, so we'll just sort of block them off there, and they won't be a problem anymore. With that all said and done, we can probably just go ahead and siege their countryside. Luckily, there are rebels pro-us in Korea, so maybe we'll get a land back or two. That may be too much to hope for, and unfortunately they do defeat them, so that was a bit too much to hope for. At any rate, we continue going through their countryside, and we'll probably just be able to realistically just siege them out and annex them, which would be completely fantastic news. They do control one of our provinces, but that doesn't really matter. In the light of things, unfortunately, we are declared war on. We'll go ahead and just cede a section of provinces, as that's really all we're able to do. And that's not exactly terrible. Unfortunately, they border the state that they made us release, so they'll probably just vassalize them, so we won't really have any chance at integrating them. So yes, all of my eggs are now in the basket of we will just colonize through Siberia into the New World, and at that point, we'll essentially be playing the game of a slightly improved North American native. Now, it is a random New World, so we might not actually have any opportunities to colonize, which would be a tremendous disaster. Also, thanks to the new patch, they are now a rebel army instead of just disappearing, so we have that to deal with. We're also declared war on by a one-province Siberian minor. However, once we deal with this rebellion, and unfortunately our army still gets wrecked, once we deal with the rebels, though, we're going to have to build up a new army in order to do that. What we could very realistically see ourselves doing is defeating this rebellion, defeating that army, annexing them, and then, moving on and becoming a colonial nation. We'll build up our army on this province, which is where they're going to transfer over to. We do manage to defeat them, which is fantastic news. And at this point, we will just keep marching our armies north into the sea. We are attacked and just wrecked. Just terribly wrecked. The fact that that war isn't going well for us. As long as we're able to get enough forces together that we're able to win it, we'll be in a good spot. Not an ideal spot, and obviously we've taken Manchu from a period and place of really nice success to just complete near disaster. As long as we're able to bounce back, this is still possible. It's still doable. So we do get our forces hopefully in a place where we can attack. We do get the bonus for fighting on our lands. Unfortunately, we still lose the battle and our capital, which is not ideal in any way. We're going to bring our forces back over. We really don't have any assets or the ability to take any loans at this point. And really, since we are losing this war, if we do actually lose this war and are forced to give up all of our lands, which it looks is the only thing we're able to do, I think at this point it's probably safe to call this campaign and start over, as really we don't have very many options left to us right now. It was definitely a learning experience. This was the first game I've ever played as a nomadic country north of China, and I wasn't sure what to expect. So it's definitely a learning experience, and I personally say we start over, we do this campaign again, and we don't make the mistakes we made here.